Okay, we're recording. So, everybody I think knows me. I'm Meredith Hawley. I am a lawyer and life coach, and I help employees stop toxic work environments without quitting their jobs. And I want to introduce everybody to my dear friend, Robert. And Robert, tell us about what's your company now? What are you doing now?
All right, awesome. First of all, I want to say thank you, Meredith, for having me on. Everyone, my name is Robert Heath Sr. I am the CEO of Legacy Leadership Consulting. We are a leadership development and executive coaching firm that specializes in helping leaders to get the best out of their people, no matter who they lead, specifically focusing on how to get your people to be more engaged, how to get your people to take more initiative, and how to get your people to think more like business owners, more like leaders, instead of just staying within their boxes and playing by the so-called rules.
So you're like from our conversations, you're all about like bringing the employees into your business and having them use all of their energy towards accomplishing what is necessary in their business without holding back. And partly I wanted to talk to you because I think we were just talking about like companies are in crisis because of COVID right now. All of our
Hmm.
business structures have been totally turned upside down. And then you add on top of that the protests around police brutality and the current climate around race issues, and how do we both be respectful and bring in diverse staff, like staff of all different races and genders and physical abilities, sexual orientation, all of this stuff. How do we bring in all
Hmm.
these people, but still have an organization that works? And
Exactly.
so I feel like you're an expert at that, and particularly at the leadership piece of it. And I love what you do. So I just want everybody to know that you are a resource out there.
Mhm.
So you were talking about three different problems sort of that people are facing right now when we were talking
Right.
earlier. Do you want to speak?
Yeah, so yeah, I can go into that a little bit, and to give a little kind of background on that,
Oh yeah.
a little bit of my background. I have my master's degree in teaching, and I was a school teacher for 6 years before I joined the Marine Corps and went to law school. I was a lawyer in the Marine Corps. I was a defense counsel. I was also a company commander. So I went and studied leadership, and I coached basketball during that period of time. And there's a whole laundry list of other things that we've talked about before, right?
Yeah.
I like to consider myself a career renaissance man. Some people say I have career ADD. I'll let the listeners
No, and I
decide.
feel like we always start nerding out when we start talking about the law stuff, because you're like, so Robert was on the opposite side of the law of what I always represent: the victim in a sexual assault case, the victim in a sexual harassment case, and Robert has the opposite perspective. And
Yeah,
so we,
right. And it was always interesting because I was a defense counsel, right? And I tried sexual assault cases, I tried drug cases, I tried a whole bunch of different cases. But I was also a company commander and a jiu-jitsu instructor where I focused on teaching women self-defense, specifically for sexual assault, domestic violence cases. So it was interesting for me because I had seen the entire spectrum of the cases. I worked with victim advocates. I worked with witness advocates. I worked with survivors and helped them through their journey to recoup their sense of self and sense of belonging. But then I've also been on the other side of the scenario, and it's the same thing. I think in a lot of these cases, I've had bad bosses, I've had great bosses, and I went and studied leadership because of the fact that as a teacher, one of the things that I got into teaching for was to help to be part of the system to change the future. Right? I wanted to teach, and I got my bachelor's degree in economics and speech communications. I wanted to teach students how to understand money, how to understand how to be citizens in the society, so that they could actually make a better world.
I mean, and it's so interesting, I think, right? Because I think both of us are always focused on meeting people at the earliest place possible when the problem is
Hmm.
just starting, because
Exactly.
we've seen these disaster scenarios on both sides. Like
Exactly. Because the
nothing good.
system is not set up to deal properly with it. And we have to then understand how to insert ourselves. And so that's a great segue, because the point that we're dealing with right now, our current systems for dealing with employee engagement, for dealing with diverse and inclusive organizations, are very poor with regard to how well people are trained to deal with things that they're not used to. And so to give you a perfect example, one of the programs that we teach is a program called Thriving in Chaos. It's a program that a lot of my clients send their employees through to help them to learn how to better manage their time, how to set boundaries on their time and enforce boundaries on their time, and how to actually understand what living each day in accordance with their purpose is. And the interesting thing about that is, given the pandemic that we've had to deal with, there are so many people, right? Gallup already put out the poll and talked about, and I've talked about it all for the last year. 70% of U.S. employees are disengaged at work, right? So only 30% of employees are engaged. Now, of that 70% that are disengaged, another 14% of them are actively disengaged. They're actively looking to go somewhere else, do something different, all the rest of that,
They're
right?
writing their resume on the work computer.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. But that was the case before COVID. And now what you've seen is that people have been thrust into the reality of how much their work life is pulling away from their family life, how much of their work life is pulling away from their ability to be the parent or the spouse or the friend or the sibling or the brother, sister that they want to be. And they're reassessing their priorities. Now that 70% population that was disengaged is coming back to work, feeling like they're missing part of their life. And work before had been a distraction from that reality, that people weren't living in alignment with their purposes. How do we manage that in a way that you can still either re-engage them or help them to exit in a way that your turnover doesn't skyrocket, and that you don't sit there and have to spend an inordinate amount of time retraining and dealing with loss in productivity, right? We know all the turnover costs that are associated with high turnover companies, right? It's not just the salary change from hiring somebody new. You also have the recruitment costs and the onboarding and training costs. You have the loss in productivity costs from going from a highly productive employee to a new employee. All of those different
Well,
types of
and
things.
even the disruption of the other workforce, of seeing somebody either quit or seeing them fired. I mean, we all say for us, we just had a beloved member of our staff decide to go to law school. And so her last day was on Friday. And we're like, we had a rough meeting today
Mm-hmm,
because we're
mm-hmm.
all just sad. And you can
Right.
see all of us say, oh, it's because of this other thing, or we just had a weird conversation with a client, but you could tell we're like mourning the loss of this person that we love, even though it's
Exactly.
positive. Like we're
Exactly. And that's in the best case scenario. Exactly.
yeah,
There is, and William Bridges in his book, Transition Management, talked about the fact that in any transition, there are 3 stages, and grieving is one of the stages, where you have to go through the grieving of the loss of what was in the past before you can get prepared for what the future is going to look like.
yeah.
Now, add to the pandemic that type of loss on a massive scale in a company, and you can see the danger, right, in not learning how to re-engage your employees and how to include them into what's going on, and how to
Right.
actually help them understand how to solve these problems, right? And
Well,
the key
and
to, oh, go ahead.
well, when you take just the 70% statistic initially, that's how much energy is not being put into all of our workforce already.
Exactly,
And then now
exactly.
people are in fear. People both are afraid to lose their jobs, but they're also seeing how, like you're saying, how much their jobs are impacting their family lives.
Right.
Yeah.
And how much I mean, a lot of people are still behind on bills. They weren't getting, some people were getting unemployment, some people, but there are still people that are hurting economically
Yeah.
in this time period. So looking at that, the big thing that I would recommend for employers is to understand that your ability to engage your employees is more powerful than ever before now. And if you have a deficiency in understanding how to do that, now is the best time to start figuring that out. There's going to come a reckoning when the economy opens back up fully, that those who are prepared and those who have put in place the appropriate systems are going to be able to weather the storm. And those who aren't are going to see it's going to be a seismic shift in the way that things work.
It's so true, I think. And I think that I have talked to a few business owners who right now are like, I'm just going to wait until the crisis is over. I'm just going to put things off until we weather this crisis. Like, what do you say to people who are feeling like that?
The biggest thing, people talk about luck is where preparation and opportunity meet, right? The biggest idea of waiting is, there are 3 different reasons why we procrastinate, right? We procrastinate, one, because we're afraid of failing. And a lot of people realize that they don't know how to deal with this, so they're afraid, so they just put it off. There's another group of people that I don't think applies as much to this, which are the people that are afraid of success. What does it look like if we're good at this? How does it change everything? There's a
Mhm.
smaller group of people that are having to deal with that, right? Because that's the fear of the unknown, right? It's no,
Well, and I
even if
think that that
everything works,
is
we don't know what it looks like.
I think that does apply because some people are having survivor guilt right now about their companies being successful, right?
Exactly,
I get it.
exactly.
We're successful, then what does that mean? Like I'm
What does
almost
that mean? Who am I?
benefiting off of other people's suffering or something like that.
Exactly. And so there's that procrastination, which says, I'm just going to pump the brakes and not do anything because at least that leaves me with the status quo. And then you have what I think a lot of the people that you're talking about right now are dealing with as well is the procrastination based on overwhelm. The problem just seems
Mhm.
so big that you don't know where to start. And the key to overcoming procrastination is different for each of those different
Mhm.
stimuli, right? If you're afraid of failure, it takes a paradigm shift. It takes understanding that any great success is built off of the stair steps, the building blocks of failures. It's an iterative process. Everything you did in your business, everything I've done in my business has been an iterative process. You try something, you get results, you adjust, you try again, you get results, you adjust, and over time we figure it out. And oftentimes what happens is once we get to a certain level of success, this is what I deal with my business owner clients all the time. They get to a certain level of success and they have to start over at the leadership, becoming an empowering leader part, because what they got really good at was being a professional. They got really good at performing. And now when you become an empowering leader, and this is what we talk about with the second point as well, learning how to engage your workplace has nothing to do with how good you are at your job. It has to do with how good you are at engaging other people. It has
And
to do with how good you are at seeing what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, what are the obstacles that are in their way, and how you can address those obstacles in a way that before they get to them, you've dealt with them so that they can run at full speed. If they're constantly slowing down so they can move chairs out of the way, they can't run.
it's so
And
true. And I kind of think that there's no time that's too early to start solving these problems because I see in my workplace with my staff, so I will like I feel like there's the boss part of us and
mhm,
there's the employee part of us. And
mhm.
I see myself when I'm executing run into the same problems that my staff does because the
Yes.
boss part of me has not planned ahead for this
Yes.
situation and has not
Yes.
created a safe space to just execute.
And that's so beautiful, though, that point that you make, and that fact that we can empathize with the employee part of them. And here's the key. Our goal is to grow the boss part of them
Yes,
because the better they are at removing those obstacles from their way earlier, the less obstacles we have to move.
right, right.
But it's a process, right? And I talk a lot to leaders about the leadership journey is a kind of three-step process. You go from being a follower to leading yourself, right? And this is what most people think of. Stephen Covey talked about it as going from being dependent to independent. And that's where most people stop. That's where most people are like, I'm grown, I got it. I'm a professional, I'm salaried, I'm certified, I am good at my job, and that's where they stop. And then they get thrust into leadership, which is the next level, which is you learn how you have to become a leader of others. A lot of people are thrust into leadership or move into leadership not because they have actually studied, trained, and want to have this position, but it's because it's the natural progression along their professional career.
Right.
When you get to that space, you are literally starting over from square one. Even though you have seen leaders and you know what leaders do, this is the dirty secret that most people don't understand. It's not an information gap that's the problem. It's a behavior gap. I don't teach people a lot about leadership. Most of the time when I go into companies, I can go into any company and the first thing that I do is we get on the whiteboard and I say, okay, what are the traits of a good leader? What does a good leader do? And they can give me all of the things: coaching, training, discussions, communicates well, has an open door policy, is always looking to better the team, all these different types of things. The qualities come from the people that I'm coaching. It's never that problem. They don't know what good leadership looks like.
Yeah.
The issue is they don't know what are the obstacles that are keeping them from doing what good leaders do. And
Right.
more importantly, they don't know how to overcome them. So generally, when we do that exercise, I get them to give me the list of leadership ideas, and then I have them describe what their day looks like. You know what
Right.
their day always looks like? Meetings, emails, phone calls, firefighting, putting out problems, solving problems for other people, interruptions, right? All of these things are the things that keep them from doing it. And that's what so many people struggle with, understanding how to A, remove those things from your life so that you can then B, start doing the training and the coaching and the supporting. And
Yeah.
that's what most people don't have training in.
I think it's like the key to the universe is that whatever we're doing right now is the obstacle to creating what we want. And you just have
Exactly.
to look at our assumption that like watching movies on Sunday is normal. And then you can
Exactly.
create the life of your dreams.
Exactly. That's the whole
Whatever it
key.
is. Yeah.
Right. Whatever you think is normal, that's the problem. The fact that it's normal is your obstacle. And
Yeah.
for so many people, what's normal in being the boss and being the leader is telling people what to do and people following. What's interesting about that, and that's the reason why my book is titled what it's titled, telling people to do and hoping they follow leads you to the place where you're constantly asking, why can't people just do their jobs? I told them what to do. And the question is the answer. If you could actually look at it and say, why can't people just do their
Yeah.
job and remove those obstacles, then people would be able to just do those jobs and you would have to do a
Right.
lot less telling because they would see it and they would make it happen. But
Themselves.
right, but what we feel is that we shouldn't, quote unquote, have to do that.
Right.
Not understanding, and I'm not the first person to say this. Simon Sinek raves about it. Jack Welch said it 30 years ago. When you are an employee, your job is the task. When you are a leader, your responsibility and your job is to take care of the people. It's not the task. It's not task oriented. The people will take care of the task if you remove the obstacles to them taking care of the task.
Right, right. Which I mean, which is legitimately challenging though.
Yes, right. And and that's the thing that we haven't been schooled in, right?
Right,
We don't learn these skills in our traditional schooling. You don't go to school and learn how to work in teams. As a matter of fact, working in teams is called cheating in school.
right,
I I know I taught 6 years, right? Generally, I was one of those teachers that did collaborative assignments and did group assignments and did all the rest of that type of stuff because I understood what how important it was for people to be able to show their cross-disciplinary expertise in
right.
multiple different facets, right? I was a Spanish teacher, and one of the things that I taught my students, yes, we took tests and we took quizzes and we did homework, but we also did projects. We also did things with rubrics where you knew what your grade was before you turned it in because you could grade it yourself, right? We did things where they had speaking and listening events where even if you're not good reading and writing, if you can speak and listen, you can get an A on this project, on
Right.
this thing. Because what I understood was there are students that learn in multiple different ways. And if I was going to get the best out of all of my students, I couldn't just teach in one way and say, if you learn it this way, you're good. I had to teach in all of the ways and say, if you learn it, you're good. And what that did is it challenged the students who were just reading and writing students to do things that were outside of their comfort zone, to learn how to be creative, to learn how to draw or to get, I did collages. They had to cut out things
Right.
from magazines. For the students that weren't really good at speaking and listening, they had to learn how to do that. And I say all that because the third problem that we were talking about is there's so many businesses that are going to try to get engagement, but they're also dealing with a workforce where they're trying to improve diversity. Every CEO and every company has
Yeah.
a diversity statement and has a declaration about Black Lives Matter and all these types of things because they're trying to do the right thing. But one of the other things that we have to understand is that we have done a lot with diversity and multiculturalism in this country over the past 30 years. What we haven't done a lot with is inclusivity.
And
What we
even I've been told, like someone was telling me that there's this new concept of fusion. Like once you get past inclusivity and that is just normal, you have this moment of fusion of totally polarized ideas coming together to
Mhm,
create
mhm.
something new. And that's
Right.
when you can really use the workforce and the brains that people are bringing, the skills that people are bringing to actually like escalate and become so much
Exactly,
more
right?
productive.
And because all the science is out there. All the studies have shown, right? And I talk about this a lot in my book, and that multidisciplinary, diverse, and inclusive organizations. It doesn't matter if it's looking at with female managers and female leadership, if it's looking at African American and racial and cultural diversity. It doesn't matter if it's talking about diversity of thought. Even when you're just looking at a homogenous group of whites that is politically diverse.
Right.
When they are politically or racially or ethnically or culturally diverse and inclusive, they outperform normal teams by 40 to 50%.
Right.
But here's the interesting thing, and some of them even by 60 to 70%.
I
But
was
here's
going
the
to say,
interesting
I
thing.
saw one thing that said, I think it's like as of 2021, those teams, if the leadership is diverse and inclusive, it's going to be like in the 80s.
That's the whole thing. When the leadership is diverse and inclusive, it skyrockets because everything permeates. When it's just the team, though, and the team is allowed to have some sort of autonomy, that's when you get closer to 60 and 70%. And when you just have regular diversity, but there's a climate where everybody feels included, then you get to even the 30, 40, 50% better. Now, here's the key, and this is where so many people struggle. There are lots of best practices in management. And when you have, right, and this is an idea, there's a book called Unleashed that I love and that I recommend to everybody by Frances Frey. And one of the things that she talks about in her book is when you have a homogenous group where everybody basically has the same experiences, best practices actually improve performance against the standard, against the norm. Just minimum best practices, everything you've read in Good to Great, everything you've read in Built to Last, and all the different types of business books that you've seen, they improve performance.
Right.
And here's the issue, and this is what a lot of companies probably see. If you just add diversity into those best practice organizations, the actual productivity goes down.
Without actual inclusion, just
without inclusion,
exactly. In with a different characteristic.
Exactly, because when you're bringing humans in with a different characteristic and all you're trying to do is get them to assimilate into an already structured system, you're only allowing them to bring to the system a fraction of who they are. And so it looks just like a Venn diagram, right? You only get a portion of who they are. And so it actually winds up now, instead of there being this concentric circle, it winds up with the Venn diagram. Only the very end, the circle in between is where you get that elevated productivity. But everything that is external to both groups, you lose it.
You're basically guaranteeing disengagement if you're not actively like moving towards inclusion. Yeah.
Exactly. But the beauty of it is, if you have inclusive practices, and the inclusive practices, like we use, $10 words, we're lawyers, we do that all the time, right? But the whole idea of inclusion is just simply this: do I feel comfortable being myself in this environment? Do I feel like I am heard? Do I feel like I am listened to? Do I feel like I am free to express myself without fear of judgment or ostracization, right? If I can feel that way, then I will show up fully. And here's the beauty: teams that have diversity and inclusion and incorporate those best practices into their teams, like we said, perform up to 3 times better than just the similar, the homogenous teams that are run with best practices. It is exponential growth. It is exponential improvement because you get the synergy of all of the various viewpoints and all of the various life experiences. And this is why in education, right? The University of Michigan, I remember when I was at the University of Illinois in undergrad, I got to have lunch with one of the people that was on that 96, the case that went through in 96, the study that they did. I got to have lunch and we got to sit down with those people. And one of the things they talked about was diversity and inclusion are such an exponential modifier that it's ludicrous not to intentionally try to. It doesn't matter what your demographic is. If it's all women, if you add men and make men feel included, it's going to be exponentially better. If it's all Black people, if you add white people and make them feel included, it's going to be exponentially better. All of the data shows, but the key is inclusion. And that is a skill that we have to learn because we are naturally taught to go towards the things that are like us and that's right? That's tribalism. Right. That's evolutionary. And that makes sense. But here's the problem with it. It's self-limiting.
It's so
If we
true.
want to have the workplace of the future, if we want to be able to do more with less and have businesses that are able to exponentially outperform our peers, here's what the Gallup study showed you. An engaged workforce returns 147% better earnings than a disengaged workforce.
It's so outstanding. I mean, I think that it's so like, this is sort of the point of like, for people who are just feeling overwhelmed right now and like want to put off doing this work, like now is actually the time to make sure that we're not just giving lip service to uh not
To the
being
changes that need to happen,
racist.
right? And the beauty of it is, it's not only the best time because the climate outside almost makes it impossible not to do it, but
Yeah,
it's also the best time because this is the lull. This is the period of time where training and learning, right? Getting with people who can create a safe space for you to learn. One of the beautiful things, and this is what we pride ourselves on in our company, right? I'm not coming in to show you how smart I am,
right.
right?
You're
Yes, I
very
did my
smart
studies
though.
and
You're
why,
very
thank you. I
smart.
appreciate it. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I make my mama proud, right?
Yeah.
But, but that's not why I go into the companies. My big thing is this. If I go in, I know I can fix these things. I've led a company of Marines,
Right.
230, right? I've done these things. I've led
And you're
places,
the winningest defense counsel in,
right? Like I've
yeah.
done those things. I've already, like my resume is good. But that's not why I do what I do. The reason I do what I do is because our company is
Oh crap.
centered around this idea. We, first of all, help those that we directly coach. Are we good?
Yeah, I think we're good. I lost
Okay.
you for a second.
No
I
problem.
thought it was me.
Good to go. No, we're good.
Okay,
So,
we coach the people that we coach.
right,
Yeah.
we help the people that we directly coach. Our focus is to help you to manifest the greatness that lies within you. We believe that every person on this planet
Ah,
has greatness within them, that has a gift that needs to be birthed to the universe. And we work to help you to manifest that greatness. But with our leaders, the biggest thing that we understand is this, right? The old adage, everybody understands it. If you give a person a fish, you feed them for a day. If you teach a person to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. Sounds great, right? And that's a step. And don't get me wrong, that's where we try to get people to. That's the next step. But that's not the top, because here's the deal. It's still, right? If you want to feed the whole world, if you want to make a tremendous impact, if you want to do a lot of things, you got to teach a lot of people how to fish. That's time consuming.
so
Right?
you create the like online business structure of fishing.
Right, and that's the whole thing. It's not just teaching people what you know. It's not just helping people to manifest their greatness. That's not where the power is.
It's
Where the legacy leadership component of it comes from is this: if you can teach a person to teach a person to
right,
fish, you
right,
can feed the whole world even after you're gone.
right. It's so true.
And that's the key with leadership. When we're helping people to manifest their greatness, we're not just teaching you how to do it for yourself so that you need us all the time. What we do is then we teach you how to teach people how to do it, how to create leadership structures that make it impossible for people to work in
Ah,
your organization and not learn how to manifest their greatness, not feel included, not feel like they are part of the team, because that becomes your culture. And when it's part of your culture, just like in the Marine Corps does not get smarter or better applicants than the other services in the military. But consistently, the Marine Corps turns out better results.
because
Why
it's
is
sort
that?
of, yeah.
Right? Why is that? It's because there's a culture of excellence in the Marine Corps that is cultivated from the minute you say, I want to be a Marine. Before you ever get to boot camp or officer candidate school, you are inculcated into a culture that says, good is not good enough. You will do your best, and you will hold people accountable to doing their best. Honor, courage, and commitment are our qualities. Semper Fidelis, always faithful, is our motto. These types of things get into you before you ever become a Marine.
But
And
you
then
know that that's just the expectation. It's just who you are as
exactly. And the culture is that everybody holds each other accountable to that. If you see a Marine whose uniform looks jacked up, you don't just walk by and not say anything. Then you're not doing your job as a Marine. And you're not going to go and, berate him, but you are going to make sure that he or she knows that they are not upholding what it means to be a Marine. And this thing that we have on our chest, the fact that we say that we're Marines, means something. And you're not allowed to act like it doesn't.
right. Right. That's
Right?
so interesting. I think that that's so important. The other thing that I want to make sure that we don't miss in this conversation is that one of the reasons that I really wanted to highlight your company is that I think in Oregon, a lot of people who follow me are in Oregon, and in Oregon, we are just a vastly homogenous white group of businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And I resolved a couple of race discrimination cases last week where one of the employees had made race discrimination claims, and they brought in a facilitator who was a white woman.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, you can't understand what my life is like in Oregon as a person of color because you're white. And she said, oh, yes, I can. I can totally understand because I speak Spanish and I've worked with refugees in the past.
Mm-hmm.
And this was super invalidating to him. But I think when we're in Oregon, a lot of times our options, because we're so white, are to work with white people who are
Mm-hmm.
working on diversity issues, me being one of them. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it is super crucial to follow leaders who are people of color, follow Black leaders while we're doing this work on racism within
Right.
our society. And so I want people to know that not every Black leader wants to work with companies on these issues, right?
Yes.
They're like
Yes.
tired
Yes.
of talking about
It's
it.
very right, and it's a very interesting scenario, right? But and part of it is there are certain people who are suited to this work, right? There's a certain level of tolerance, there's a certain level of patience, there's a certain level of understanding, there's a certain level of empathy that's necessary to do this work. And right, because if taking that situation, because we talked about that kind of before we got on, right?
Yeah.
When he said you can't understand what I'm feeling like because you're white, that is not a true statement, although it is his feeling. Just the fact that she is white does not mean that she cannot understand, because there's a number of white scenarios that I can give you where you can have the exact same experience as a Black person growing up in America, right? Now, it's difficult. There needs to be a whole bunch of extra factors that you add onto there, right? But nonetheless, a white person growing up in South Africa after apartheid ended might be able to understand some of the things that people are understanding in America.
I just
For
think
the
it's not important though. Like it's not,
That's the key. It's
yeah,
not an important, and it's not an important thing. And to his point, if he's explaining that you can't understand what I'm feeling, the way to deal with that is not to negate his
right.
statement that you
It's the
can't
point.
understand what I'm feeling, right?
Right.
Like you don't win by arguing, oh, yes, I can. You win by showing empathy. You
Yeah.
win by showing and demonstrating that you may not understand it completely, but nonetheless, I can do what's necessary to make you feel safe, because that is your role if you are being an ally.
Yeah.
I am a male who has grown up never worrying about what I wear or what, if I get drunk at a party, what's going to happen to me, or any of those different things that so many of my female students had to worry about in their lives on a daily basis. Now, here's the thing. I will not ever fully understand what it is like to be a woman in a male dominated society. But what I am in the place of is someone who has studied enough and talked to enough people that I know what to say and how to comfort and how to show empathy. Brene Brown is one of my favorite people on the planet. And one of the reasons why is because what she talks about is these icky places where you
Yeah.
don't know what to do and it's really uncomfortable and it's weird, and having the conversation, right? And in her book, Dare to Lead, one of the things that she talks about so much is empathy is one of the hardest things to do, because empathy forces you to not solve the problem.
Right.
Empathy says, I'm going to sit with you here where you are because I do understand how you feel. And what you don't want is me to solve your problem. What you want is me to acknowledge. And you want to be supported. You want to, and then you will solve your problem in its due time, or you will ask for the help that you need to solve your problem in its due time. If I'm empathetic instead of sympathetic, if I'm not just feeling sorry for you and
Right.
therefore wanting to fix your
Well,
situation
and
so that
that's
I
us
can feel
wanting to
better.
get out of discomfort. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. So that I can
Yeah.
feel better, because this discomfort sucks,
Yeah.
right? When I'm empathetic, I realize this discomfort sucks. And guess what? You're stuck in it. I can walk away. I can separate. I can disengage. You're stuck with it.
But being
If
able to
she,
walk with people through their
exactly. And
experiences.
to accompany that, if she was truly understanding of what he was dealing with, then she would be able to give him the space that he needs to vent,
Right.
And then she would be able to shepherd him through the grieving process and being able to say, are you ready to move on now?
And I just think that because we see so many white leaders right now invalidating the experience of Black people, invalidating the experience of people of color, I think it is really important for businesses to look to Black leadership
Hmm.
for answers for this and not try to solve it ourselves. And
Right.
like
And I
break.
think that it's important to understand the handicap that you have, right? Like here's the interesting thing, and this is what's so difficult, right? Because people are well-meaning. It's not like people are trying
Totally.
to. We're trying to. If you're trying to solve it yourself, you're trying to solve the problem. You're trying
Right.
to help. It's
Right.
not like you're standing on the sidelines, like gaslighting people. No, that's not really. That's not what happens here. We're good people here. There's no racism anymore, right? Like all those different types. We had a Black president. All those different types of things that the gaslighting crews are doing.
Right.
That's not what's happening. There are people that are actually trying to solve the problem. But here's the deal. And I saw a post that it really stuck out to me. I talked to you a little bit about this before. The steps to mastery, right? We go from being completely oblivious, not knowing what we don't know, and the next step, which is the step that makes so many people afraid to go forward, is incompetency. We just get to the point where we're aware of all of the stuff that we don't know. We still can't do anything about it, but we're aware now. And that's a traumatic experience for a lot of people. I was just on Facebook with a guy yesterday who was kind of, and he was white, but he was talking about how frustrated and upset he was with the fact that there's so many white people that can't see it. And I was telling him, just like I tell a lot of my Black friends, one of the things that we have to understand, while I appreciate the fact that everybody that's woke now is woke and sees it, but part of the rage and the anger is a lack of empathy as well. Now, there's an argument to be made that there's certain people that shouldn't, quote unquote, have to be empathetic. We've been dealing with this too long, and I'm upset and I'm angry. Understand that those people are in the anger stage of grief, right? Like, I
Yeah.
get it, but we understand that there are stages of grief, and there's a point where you have to accept what the reality is. And the reality is that in our country, we have been ignoring race problems for the majority of our history,
Yeah.
just like we've been ignoring misogyny and gender problems for the majority of our history. Like, let it not be lost on us that we had to have an amendment after the 13th Amendment, which gave, and the 14th and the 15th Amendments, which gave the rights to men who had been slaves to vote. We had to then have another amendment to give women the right to vote.
Yeah.
That's and that was in the 19th, I mean, the 20th century. That was 1919 or 1920. I can't
Yeah.
remember. It's the 19th
Yeah. I think
Amendment or
you're
the
right.
20th Amendment. And it's 1919. I always flip them and mess up. I know it's 19 and 20, just which one
Constitutional
is which.
law.
Exactly, right? But at the end of the day, that was 1920 before women had the right to
Yeah.
vote in this country.
Yeah.
And for a long time, we act as if our progress negates the trauma and the suffering that our regressive past inflicted.
Well, and I think that we see this with every justice issue and civil rights issue that comes up, where we're mistaking seeing the problem as a danger instead of seeing the problem as a danger. And I think
Exactly.
it's easy to do because it is terrifying when we come in contact with our own complicity in the problem.
Exactly. It's an identity crisis.
Yeah, and I think that we have to be willing to be there and move through it and have it be. I mean, I was dealing with this last week. I was thinking, if the result I want in life is to eliminate police brutality, like I just want that to not be a topic that exists in our society anymore. The thing I need to do is show up a lot and be wrong and let people
Yes.
tell me that I'm wrong. And I need to
Yes.
feel uncomfortable and say I'm gonna do this wrong. And
Yes.
it's not supposed to be fun and
No.
comfortable.
Right. But that's where the growth happens. That's where the learning happens. That's where we all get better, because the key thing about it is, just like I don't expect that white people know what it's like to be a Black man in America, I don't really know what it's like to be a white man in America. We've studied white people a lot longer than white people have studied Black people. This is true. But nonetheless, I've also never been white.
And it's just not our job to know everyone's experience, but I think that our experiences and listening to people who have different experiences is what pulls us through this and gets us to the other side of getting the results that
Exactly.
we want.
Because when you seek to understand, right? A lot of people say it's not understandable. There's just no reason for this. It's a conclusion. It's not but it's a statement that's masking the reality, which is, I don't understand how someone could do that.
Yeah.
And that space of not understanding, we make it a moral judgment of not being understandable or not justifiable, whatever the case may be. And we do that to save ourselves from the shame and the guilt of not being able to understand it.
Yeah.
Because if we were able to understand it, then we would be able to fix it. But since we can't fix it, we must make it unfixable, because otherwise we have work to do. We can't displace our anger at the other.
Right.
And so for me, when I work with companies and when we talk about diversity and inclusion, when we talk about leadership, when we talk about all these things, right? My book, Why Can't People Just Do Their Jobs, is tongue in cheek. The reason people can't just do their jobs is because we as leaders aren't doing our jobs as leaders.
Yeah.
And if we did our jobs as leaders, people are amazing at doing their jobs. They actually are way better at doing their jobs than you are, even though what most leaders find is that they're doing the majority of their people's jobs. That's the problem. But we got to we help our clients to figure out how to overcome that problem and how to then move to the place where their people are solving the problems themselves and they're creating more leaders. And now when they leave, when their legacy is concluded, what winds up happening is that they are actually better than they were when they were there. It is a testament to your leadership that your company improves when you leave, when you're on vacation. When I was a teacher, I used to love the fact that my class actually ran better when I wasn't there than when I was.
Because you've already set things up to run without you. I think that's amazing. So, and I also think, like, in my business, we work with people who are in the employees who are in the crisis after there's already a collapse in the leadership. And I think that what you do is such great preventative work to make sure people never have to come to me and get
Exactly.
help, right?
Exactly.
So everyone
That's the
needs
goal.
to hire Robert. This is my my command to everyone. So what's the easiest way for people to reach out to you? Is it joining the Facebook group? Is that
so
yeah. Oh. Okay, I
no
got
problem.
kicked off, but Robert's going to tell us, how can people work with you?
Right. So for those individuals that are looking to learn how to thrive in this chaos of the new normal and figure out how to live the life that you're supposed to live, to understand how to interruption-proof your life, how to exponentially improve your productivity, I have a group on Facebook. It's called the Thrive Tribe. It's a free group. I do live trainings there, and I also have a master class that you can get access to through that space. I also, for business owners, for business leaders, people who are learning, wanting to make that next step to becoming the leader that you know you're supposed to be, to being able to get the best out of your people, I want you to go to my website. It's www.legacyleadershipmastery.com. And on that website, you can go ahead and you can get a copy of my book for free. You can download it, the e-copy for free. And you can also set up a time to book a strategy session with me where we can sit down and talk about what are the specific needs of your organization and what we can do to help.
Okay, so legacyleadershipmastery.com.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. And because we're going from not knowing to mastery.
Yes. Awesome. I love it. Well, I'm so excited you talked to me today and about everything that you're doing. Everyone join his group and go sign up for the class. Hire Robert.
Awesome. Oh, and you can go ahead and give them my email if you want, and they can reach out to me directly as well.
Yeah. Well, tell us your email because I'm still.
So my email is simple. If you got the legacyleadershipmastery.com part right, you just put Robert in front of it, and you got Robert at legacyleadershipmastery.com, awesome. And we'll get in touch.
Yeah. So if there's a problem that people are having in their workplace that is sort of not something they want to publicly deal with or share, that's probably the best option.
Yeah, exactly. Either that one or the strategy session, both of those will get to me. And I just want to make sure that, especially for your group, if they have something pressing right now that they need to deal with, like, just email me. Yeah. Right. I can get you through and we can set up everything, and I'll get you a calendar link. If you want to peruse, and like I said, if you want to get a free copy of the book, you can also set up a strategy session with me. Feel free to go to the website and, have fun. There's lots of cool stuff on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much.